We're getting ready for Shabbos, Shabbos Hagadol, which is known as the Big Shabbos. Why? Because this is the Shabbos that a great miracle happened, Shabbos Hagadol, which is known as the miracle of L'Maka Mitzrayim B'Vchereihem, when Hashem struck the firstborn and of Egypt, and that was the final plague. So before that, God told Moshe to tell the Jewish people that they have to, it's getting ready for Pesach, that they have to take a sheep, which was the deity, the idol of Egypt, and to sacrifice it on the 14th and get ready to leave on the 15th. And they have to take it from the 10th. They take the Paschal lamb and put it next to their space in their bed, and wait for those few days on the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, and the 14th, 5 days, and then they slaughter it. And the Egyptians already were very wary of everything that was going on by the Jewish people. Why? Because the Jewish people there was already 9 plagues, and they knew the Jewish people wanted to leave. Slavery, the intensity of the slavery was over. There was no more slaves. It was just, they were not allowed to leave Egypt. But at the same time, they weren't being treated as slaves because of all the plagues and what was happening in Egypt. So they see that the Jewish people are tying the lamb to the bed, and they're saying, what's going on? So they said, well, God said to do the Paschal lamb, there's going to be one last plague, which is the death of the firstborn, and then we're going to leave Egypt. And before that, we have to sacrifice the Paschal lamb. So they said, what are you talking about? That God's going to kill the firstborn. So the firstborn all gathered together and went to Pharaoh and said, let the Jews go. Let the Israelites go. This is crazy. We're all going to die. The last plague is the killing of the firstborn. We're all going to die. And Pharaoh said, no, I'm not letting the firstborn go, even though he himself was a Bechor. He was a firstborn. So there started a war, an internal war in Egypt. The firstborn fought against their own. They were saying this is crazy. They were saying this is crazy. That the Jewish people, everything Moshe said, Moshe had a good track record by then. Moshe never said anything that didn't happen. So when he says to Paro there's going to be frogs, there was frogs. When he says to Paro there's going to be blood, there was blood. When he says there's going to be lice, wild animals, boils, etc., hail, fire, and water, it happened. So when the Jewish people are hearing, and the Egyptians are hearing from the Israelites, that there's going to be the death of the firstborn, and then the Jewish people are going to leave after the 10th plague, they go, this is crazy already. Let the Jews out. Let them out. Stop this. Egypt's going to be destroyed. Doesn't make sense. There's no logic here. So that was the miracle of Maka Mitzrayim V'Vchereihem, and therefore on the Shabbos Hagadol is a great Shabbos. Now the thing is like this. What day did that happen? That happened on the 10th. This year, it says when we leave just as we left Egypt, we're going to leave the Geulah Shlema. We're going to leave this Galus that we're in now. And actually, it fits in the schedule of things too, because the year we left Mitzrayim, also the Yud Nisan, which is the 10th of Nisan, was Shabbos Hagadol. That was the Shabbos of the death, of the fighting, of the rebellion of the firstborn. And on 10th was on Shabbos, and then the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th was on Wednesday. They slaughtered the first Paschal lamb, and on Thursday, middle of the day, they left Egypt. So it's just like this year, where Wednesday night, Thursday is going to be Pesach. The thing is like this: why don't we celebrate this miracle always on the 10th? In Judaism, we never celebrate by the week, besides for Shabbos, of course. But Shabbos is a week day, meaning to say that of the week, the 7th day of every week is Shabbos. But an event that happened on a holiday, we celebrate it on the day of the holiday. And Chanukah is on the 25th of Kislev, and Pesach is on the 15th of Nisan, and Shavuos is always on the 6th. Shavuos actually is 50 days from Yetzias Mitzrayim, but again, it's 50 days from Yetzias Mitzrayim. But today it's already always on the 6th of Sivan, and Rosh Hashanah is always the first of the month. So this is etc. Why don't we celebrate the Shabbos Hagadol on every 10th of Nisan? Because that's when the miracle happened. So it's answered. The Alter Rebbe brings it down Shulchan Aruch, and the answer is is because something happened on the 10th of Nisan also. The death of the great prophetess Miriam, Moshe's older sister Miriam. She passes away on the 10th of Nisan. Because of that, some people fast, so it's not a day that we want to actually have, that the day itself should be a holiday. So we always celebrate Shabbos Hagadol as it fell out in the week, which was the Shabbos before Pesach. But this year we get to celebrate it both on the day and the day of the week, both on the 10th, because if the 10th falls out on Shabbos, then of course we don't fast. And whatever we could accomplish, like the Rebbe says, whatever we accomplish through fasting, Shabbos accomplishes anyways. Like on Rosh Hashanah, we don't blow the shofar, because whatever we need to accomplish with the shofars happens on Rosh Hashanah, on Shabbos. So, but this year it actually happens on the 10th. So I just want to talk a little bit before about the Parsha and get ready for Pesach, about the miracle. The Rebbe says an amazing thing about the miracle. What was so great about the miracle? We call it Shabbos Hagadol. You know that? The big Shabbos, because of a big miracle. There was plenty of miracles that happened throughout our history, and they're not called Hagadol. And there's no other Shabbos of the year that's called Hagadol. Why is this such a great miracle? It's not even, I wouldn't put it in category of a miracle. It's logic. If Moshe Rabbeinu has a 100% track record, he never said anything. He asked, when Paro asked him, when he asked Paro, when do you want the plague to stop? Moshe made us a line on the wall. And he said exactly when the sun hits this wall, this line, is exactly when the plague is going to stop. When the other plagues, he said, when do you want it to stop? He said, tomorrow it's going to stop. But Moshe said it was going to stop. The hails that were falling, the hails that were made of ice and water, it wasn't just hail, it was destructive. It was like fire bombs of hail. So it was hailing of hard ice and fire. It was literally falling down bombs from heaven. Moshe made a line and said, when the sun reaches this point, there won't be another hail that falls, and the hails that were mid-ear stayed. So Moshe had a 100% track record that whatever he says is going to happen. And the Egyptians by this point realized this wasn't over a few days, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, that they kind of were overwhelmed. This was over a year. After a year of plagues, every plague took 4 weeks. Every plague was 1 week of the plague and 3 weeks of the prep and the warnings and all that. So every plague was 4 weeks. It says about Avraham Avinu when he went to the Akedah, it says by Yom HaShlishi, on the third day he sees the mountain. Why can't God show him the mountain right away? Why does he have to walk 3 days? So it's not just a question of distance. The idea was that God wanted to show that people of Yetzirah shouldn't say that Avraham Avinu was overwhelmed. He was caught in the moment. God came to him and said himself, God said, go take your son and sacrifice him on Mount Moriah. And go take your son. If God tells you, you run and do it. But after a while, after 3 days, you become more miyushav in Hebrew. Miyushav means settled. And you start thinking to yourself, 1 second, does this make sense? Am I going to literally slaughter my son? He had 3 days to think about it. And he never deviated from it for a second. He went straight to the mountain. He took his son Yitzchak, he tied him, he put him on the altar, and he was about to slaughter him as Hashem asked. And then God said, see, I showed Avram's my man. He's not just a loving person, he's a fearful person. So what do we see over here? That God wanted to show that he was miyushav. He didn't do it out of excitement. And then later, you know what it says about Achashverosh? That Vashti was a very dominant personality. We're coming from Purim. Vashti was a very dominant personality. She came from better yichus. She came from better lineage than Achashverosh. Vashti was the granddaughter of kings. Nebuchadnezzar. She was a princess. She was a snob. She was arrogant. She would belittle Achashverosh. They had a very shaky, rocky relationship. And when he was in the moment to try to show that he was in control, and she said, "No, I'm not showing up to your party to show you. You're not showing me off as a trophy wife." So he got angry and he killed her. The next morning he regretted it. He wasn't miyushav. He was acting out of passion, out of anger. But here, Avraham Avinu, 3 days, has time to settle, lahavdil, from the Rasha Achashverosh. Avraham was able to be settled, and he listened, and he went and sacrificed. So too, the Egyptians. The Egyptians were not overwhelmed by the plagues because they happened in a period of 10 days. They happened in a period of almost a year. Every plague, 4 weeks. By the time the 10th plague was about to happen, and the Egyptians here, and that Moshe Rabbeinu says that the firstborn will die, will be killed, they knew with certainty that that's going to happen. So why do we call this Shabbos Hagadol? Why is it called the Great Shabbos? It's logic. It's a normal reaction. If you know for sure you're going to die, and the reason you're going to die is because your king is acting irrational and stubborn, and saying, "Sorry, you can't. I'm not letting the Jews out," and it doesn't make sense anymore. Already, his advisors told him much earlier, that what are you doing? Don't you know Egypt is destroyed? Don't you know you lost everything? You can't win this. It's over. Let them go. Let's save what you can of our dignity, of our country. And in theory, had he let the Jews out midway, although God hardened his heart, but had he done it, the Jews would have left, and he would have had his kingdom bruised, hurt, not as dominant as he was, but he would have survived. But he was acting irrational and crazy. So for the Egyptians to rebel, when they hear that the Moshe Rabbeinu says that they're going to die, it's normal. Why do we call it Shabbos Hagadol? Because a great miracle happened. What's the miracle? I mean, the miracle is about the whole experience of the plagues, but that wasn't specifically for this story. The reaction by this point to the plagues was normal. It would be crazy for them not to react this way. It's nature. So here the Rebbe says an amazing thing. And it's very much applicable to our times. That we have the Friedrich Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, I think, said that we're not going to get out of Gullus on our own a second before it's time, before God chooses. There's no pattern and process that's just going to slowly evolve to Geulah. Geulah is going to be this great moment, just like Yetzias Mitzrayim was, just like Matan Torah was. It's going to come from above. That we spoke about the Rebbe Sicha. The Rebbe spoke in 1962. Right, Edom and Batzra is in Iraq, Iran, and Edom is the West. The Rebbe says in Hosicha that God Himself is going to take the Jewish people out. It's not going to happen through Achashverosh. It's not going to happen through the UN. Mashiach is going to B'ni B'chayri Yisrael. The Jewish people are God's firstborn. And just like the firstborn in Egypt, God says that these are my firstborn and you are the firstborn of Egypt. And God showed that the firstborn of the Jewish people are not going to be plagued because B'ni B'chayri Yisrael, God's firstborn. God comes in like Pidyon Haben, the redemption of when you redeem the firstborn, which is because of the miracle that the firstborn of the Jewish people were not taken and were not part of the plague of the firstborn, because B'ni B'chayri Yisrael were God's firstborn, and it's represented in the mitzvah Pidyon Haben that Av Poides B'nai, that the father has an obligation to redeem his son, and God is the father of the Jewish people, and we're the firstborn of the Jewish people. He has to be Poides B'nai. He has to redeem the Jewish people, and he makes a blessing, and he makes the blessing on the Pidyon Haben. And he makes it like the conclusion of the tractate of Pesachim, and he makes a blessing on Shehechiyanu to show that everything's going to happen Min Hashemayim. So we have to know that everything that's going on, this is all the world shaking, but the Geulah itself is going to come. The redemption comes from God, and so too what happened in Egypt, with everything that was going on. There was 9 plagues. The Jews weren't even being officially treated as slaves anymore. It was over. Egypt was chaos. There was no more. Again, Egypt was because of Yosef. Because of Yosef, Egypt became the most organized, systematic country of its time, and most probably for all times. Yosef was the super organizer. He was organized. He had everything worked out. They benefited from Yosef's structure of government for all the years. He set the structure. He wrote the Constitution of Egypt. And the Jewish people everything was collapsed. That whole system collapsed in the year of the plagues. But nevertheless, the Jewish people couldn't leave. Paro was still strong. The Jewish people could not leave. It wasn't like they were hanging out in Egypt waiting for it to leave. They couldn't leave. God gave Paro the strength, and that's why Moshe, even after 6 plagues, by the 7th plague, when God said, Boyal Paro, Moshe was still intimidated by Paro. Because God gave Paro a koach, a strength that he didn't take away from him yet. He was getting bruised and banged up, but Paro was still Paro. He was still in control. And the Jewish people couldn't leave yet. And here comes the firstborn. And this is the great miracle. The great miracle is the firstborn come and they say, what is it? This is crazy. They were fighting against that. They were saying that the idea that Paroi, that Teva, the nature of Paroi has the strength over the Jewish people, they were saying this is crazy. They were fighting against the system of Hashem. They were fighting against the power that God gave Paroi. They were saying this doesn't make sense. We can't continue like this. That was the great miracle. The great miracle was that Teva, that the nature itself rebelled against the supernatural, which was giving koach to the strength to Paroi, to tumah, to impurity. The miracle is how that against what God almost would say decided, there was an inner rebellion of the people. They were not subscribing to Paro's strength anymore. It'd be as if the Iranian people would do what everyone expects them to do, which would be, this is crazy. These people are holding us hostage. We're a great country. We could be free. We could have, everyone could serve in the religion they want in freedom, without force, that would be the logical thing. There's a fear here. But there's a breaking point when the firstborn say this is crazy. And that's the miracle of Shabbos Hagadol. There's another great thing that happened on Yud Nisan. Yud Nisan is the day, and we spoke about this in years past, the day the Jewish people entered the land. The Jewish people entered the land by the Rosh HaKovshim, the head of the conquerors, which was Joshua, Yeshua, the successor to Moshe. Moshe's the faithful student who took over from Moshe and entered the land. The day the Jewish people entered the land was Yud Nisan. When they entered the land, and we spoke many years, wondering why is it not a holiday? Why don't we celebrate the holiday when the Jewish people enter Eretz Yisrael? It's an unmarked day. That if you asked a person, a regular person on the street, what day did the Jewish people enter the land? I'm not certain how many people are familiar with the date. That Yud Nisan is the date the Jewish people entered. It's not a marked date. It's not celebrated in any way. If you ask anyone what happened on the 10th of Nisan, they'll say more people know that Miriam passed away. And even more people know that's the day of Makas Bechoros. Of Makom Mitzrayim of Charein. That's the real day of Shabbos Hagadol. But it's not so familiar to people, the idea this is the day the Jewish people entered the land, Eretz Yisrael, by Rosh HaKovshim. Why not? So we never had a clear answer why not, but the Torah, the whole point, Moshe, this is the day where everything, the full circle of everything comes to form. The first time we meet the beginning of the Jewish people is our father Avraham. And our father Avraham is telling, Lech Lecha, leave, continue going out of the way from where you're going. You were leaving from Orkazdim and you went to Aharon. Continue towards Eretz Canaan. This is the land for you and your descendants. This is the land where I'm going to build a nation out of you. And it's going to be a process. And he told them about the 400 years of enslavement in order for the Jewish people to come out as a nation and to be able to go into receive the Torah. We don't talk about the Torah, but we have Eretz Yisrael. We know the Moshe Rabbeinu was told that we should go into the Eretz, that before you go into Eretz Yisrael, you're going to receive the Torah. The Jewish people were told we're going to Eretz Yisrael. It was all about going to Eretz Yisrael. And when the Jewish people don't want to go to Eretz Yisrael because they descend as spies, they're punished. And Moshe taught, if you open Devarim, pasuk after pasuk after pasuk, Eretz, Eretz. This is the land of milk and honey, the land of water and springs, and the Moshe Rabbeinu. I mean, if you want to build a case for Chibas Eretz Yisrael, for the love of Eretz Yisrael, for Chibas Eretz HaKodesh, for the Holy Land, is you open up Devarim, Mishnah Torah, you see Moshe talking so lovingly about Eretz Yisrael. We open up Parshas Veschanan, and we see how Moshe davened so many tefillos to go to Eretz Yisrael. And when finally the Jewish people go to Eretz Yisrael, it's an unmarked day. They cross, and they don't even just sneak in. They cross in with the ark, passing over the Jordan River, walking through, conquering Jericho. All unmarked days. But this year, Yud Nisan falls out on Shabbos Hagadol, and so it's a big day. There's big things happening. I think that maybe the date of Yud Nisan has been postponed because it says Ad Yavar Am Hashem Ad Yavar. We say 2 times Ad Yavar, that there's 2 times the Jewish people are going to enter the land. 2 main times. One time there's really 3 major entries. The first entry was with Joshua. The second entry wasn't as great, and Sotah says it wasn't as great. It could have been as great when they came in with Ezra, right? And Ezra also, it's an unmarked date when Ezra, because it wasn't such a fabulous day. Ezra has to bribe the Jewish people. It says Yochsin. Ezra had to find the people that had nowhere else to live, so they were misfits. Ezra found all the misfits and said, "Listen, we have a mission. We're going to return to the land. We're making aliyah. You have a second chance. You didn't fit into society of Bavel. Come with me." So the Sar Yuchsin, the Gemara tells us that Ezra found the people that had nowhere else to live. So they came with Ezra and they went to Eretz Yisrael. This is so. But the Gemara in Saita says it could have been greater. The Jewish people didn't come. They didn't want to leave. The Jewish people of Yemen didn't want to leave, and of other places. So comes, but the next Ad Yavar, the next time the Jewish people enter the land, is going to be with Mashiach Tzidkenu. We're not talking about Baruch Hashem people living in Eretz Yisrael now. We're talking about entering the land and building the Beis Hamikdash, like Ezra built the Beis Hamikdash, and having the Melech HaMashiach, the King Mashiach rule. That's going to be with Mashiach. So it could be that we don't celebrate Yud Nisan. This is Mamish talking from no source or proof to say what I'm saying, but it's just a feeling that could be that Yud Nisan we're going to celebrate with the coming of Mashiach. So it's a date that's still on hold. Its greatness hasn't been shown yet, but this is the day that we come to Eretz Yisrael with Mashiach Tzidkenu. So I want to bless everyone that coming. Now we're getting to the month of Pesach. The focus that we have to have is, like the Rebbe said once, that when it talks about all the noise in the world, it says Lamarog Shugoyim, Lumim Yegu and Izrik. The Rebbe says that the nations are going to be rumbling, and all this balagan, yes, no, this, that, fighting, this agenda, that agenda, oil, Straits of Hermes, all these things is Lamarog Shugoyim Lumim have it's Rik. The Rebbe says. The quotes the Pasuk in Tillah. What bothered David HaMelech? Ma Rabut Sarai. What does he say? Saras is he has no nachas from his children. That Avshalom rebelled and Adonijah rebelled. That's what bothered. The Gemara says in Brachas. That's what bothered David. David stayed focused. What's going on in his own home? Why are his children rebelling? Why are these things? What's happening in the world? Lamarag Shugayim is Rik. So we have to know also that we're getting ready for the last days before Mashiach comes. And the Nisan Asidin Legoil is we have to be Marabot Sarai. We have to focus on finding an inner Geula, inner redemption in our own lives, in our own space. Get ready for Mashiach. The Jewish people before Yisis Mitzrayim took a lamb and put it by the bed. They got ready. Go out there, do more mitzvahs. Create a Geula Pratis. Create a real redemption. Parshat Tzav, we have to say a few words about the Parsha. Parshat Tzav is a Parsha, and then when we open the Maimarim of Parshat Tzav, it's the Parsha that talks about weddings. And the weddings because the wedding that started with Matan Torah and with the Mishkan when God came in, what is a wedding? When you build a home. And you build a home, God built his home in the Jewish people. with the Jewish people. V'shachanti b'socham. And we're getting ready in this week's Parsha, where we have the idea of the Kol Chostin and the Kol Kala when Mashiach comes, when it's going to be the complete house and the full relationship between the Jewish people and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's going to be Kol Chostin and Kol Kala. The bride also has a voice. The bride also is going to say something. We're going to have what to say. And in order we have what to say, we have to get ready for this Yom Hagadol. We have to get ready for the great day that's coming towards us, that Parshat Tzav is describing. Because again, you open up the Maimorim, we open up the discourses of Tzav. Besides the fact that most of all the Maimorim of Pesach is in Tzav. Again, nothing's by chance. Not especially when the Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, and the Alter Rebbe, and they put the Maimorim of Tzav, of Pesach in Tzav, though it's usually around Tzav, but it could have had its own section, is to connect Tzav with Pesach, with the Geulah. And the Maimorim of Tzav itself are about weddings, about the idea of what happens when everything comes together, and talks about the Yimais HaMashiach and Tchias HaMeisim. So again, this is a parsha that there's a lot going on. It's a Shabbos Hagadol, and we gave reasons why it's called Gadol, but maybe the Yom Hagadol, the real Gadol, is the Yom Hagadol V'Hanoira, the great, awesome day that's going to be with the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, B'mheira B'meinu Mamish. I want to thank you, Jeremy and Reb Shimon and others who come to join. And we're not going to have a class next week because of next week is Seder night. So it's a pleasure to sit here with you before Pesach. And I wish everyone a Chag Kosher V'Sameach, and everyone should be blessed. B'toiv Hanir V'Nigla. And like the Rebbe says, that eating matzah is eating a likus, is eating godliness, and matzah brings refuah, and matzah brings emunah, belief, and it's a mamish, it brings humility, it's a humbling bread. It's a bread where a person eats that's connected to humility, like the Rebbe says about that we spoke about this before, but in chapter 32 of Tanya, when the Alter Rebbe says that the only way a person could truly have Avos Yisrael is when it's not about you. Not that I love a Jewish person. I love my neighbor. I'm going to do them a neighbor. I'm going to do my friend a favor. I'm going to give something to my friend. When a person is totally nafsham ikar v'gufam tafel, when your primary is your soul and your secondary is your body, then automatically you're connected to the next person, and that comes from bittul. And matzah brings bittul. And the Rebbe says that's why Avos Yisrael is called a Torah Kula. Why is Avos Yisrael the most essential mitzvah? Because every mitzvah, what does it mean? The thermometer of where a person's holding is how you do Avos Yisrael. And that shows how you're doing in everything. If you don't have Avos Yisrael, then you don't have Avos Hashem, you don't love God. And if you don't love Avos Yisrael, you're not doing your mitzvahs right. Because if you're doing your mitzvahs right, you would have proper Avos Yisrael. Why? Because to do your mitzvahs right, you have to have bittul, you have to have self-nullification. Get out of yourself. That's the biggest redemption you could get. The biggest redemption we could have on Pesach is the redemption to get out of our own agenda. Be free to serve Hashem. Be free to pursue ruchnius. Be free when the Friedrich Rebbe says his father told him that when we open the door for Elijah, we say to Elijah, we have an opportunity to ask something. He says, ask ruchnis, not kashmis. Why? Because it's a sign. What's your prime? What interests you when Elijah comes through your door? We have one question you could ask him. Are you going to ask him for a bracha? Are you going to ask him, even if you're asking for parnasa or refuah, but you should serve Hashem better. Everything, the primary should be your ruchnius. Become free of all these pressures from the outside. I want to wish everyone, we should be zoichet to the Geulah mitzvah vashlema. Everyone should have a refuah shleimon. Everyone should be gesund. Arichos yom shem tayves. In the Chag Kosher v'Sameach. With the matzah and the maror, we should eat here in Yerushalayim, Yer Kodesh, with the Paschal lamb on Har HaBayis. When the 2 times of the year we say L'Shana Haba Yerushalayim is Pesach and Yom Kippur. Why do we say next year in Jerusalem on Pesach? Because we're hoping that by next year we could celebrate Pesach with the Paschal lamb in the Beis HaMikdash, and the Beis HaMikdash is going to be on Har HaBayis. The Jewish people have to learn to be proud. and not to contradict themselves when we say L'shana Bab Yishalayim and then say, no, we're not talking about the temple. We are talking about the temple. Because when we say L'shana Bab Yishalayim, we mean we're going to build a temple in Jerusalem on Har HaBayis, on Temple Mount. Because when we build it based on Mikdash, it's going to happen with Mashiach. It's not about an initiative. When Mashiach comes, that's what's going to happen. It has to be clear. We're going to build the base of Mikdash. And we're going to do the Paschal Lamb on Har HaBayis on Temple Mount. And we're going to eat the Pesach and the Matzah and the Maror on Temple Mount with the Korban Pesach. And that's what we say it on Yom Kippur, because when we do the Avodah in Yom Kippur, it's going to be with the Beis HaMikdash. And when we say 3 times a day, we mean the actual Beis HaMikdash and Har HaBayis. So may it be speed in our times that we should be Zaycha this year already, going to Shabbos Hagadol. It should be Taka Gadol, and Yud Nisan should be like it was Kishanim Kadmonius of the year, the day that Klal Yisrael and Bnei Yisrael entered Eretz Yisrael. We should be coming into Eretz Yisrael the way it should truly be with Mashiach Tzidkenu. B'meir b'meinu. Good Shabbos, everyone. Good Yom Tov, and stay tuned to all the messages and information coming from the University District Minyan for your local Seder and Seder information. Laila Tov, take care. Good Shabbos.
Thank you, sir. Good night.